What's up, guys? Welcome to True Crime Queen. My name is Ginger. Listener discretion is advised. The dark nature of the show is not suitable for young ears or those sensitive to graphic material. But without further ado, let's go. Welcome back to part 2 of the disappearance case in Kyron Horman. It's pretty critical that you listen to these in chronological order, so if you happen to miss part 1, make sure you stop whatever the heck you're doing and go listen to that segment first. Or don't, I guess. I mean, you do you guys. Any hooser, Kyron Horman part 2, let's go! So because nothing was coming from the civil lawsuit that Desiree filed, she ended up dropping the case in the end of July 2013. At that same time, Kane is still trying to divorce Terry, but it keeps getting pushed out due to the claims that he had made about Terry that were involving the criminal investigation that was also being sorted out at the time. So the Kyron case kept taking precedence over the divorce proceedings, and it wasn't until December 2013 that a judge would officially rule on whether or not the claims that Rudolfo the landscaper had actually been hired to kill Kane would be usable or not in the adjoining custody battle that was going on. The judge ruled that only parts of Rudolfo's claims would be allowed in the courtroom for the custody portion. A month after this ruling, the divorce between Kane and Terry would become finalized, but their custody hearing is set for 6 months after in June 2014. Kane was awarded full custody at that hearing, even though it had apparently come out that Rudolfo the landscaper was involved in a failed sting operation between Terry and the police. And there are some types of rumors that Rudolfo was actually being threatened with deportation if he chose not to cooperate with the police in this sting operation. And it should be noted that during the entire testimony with Rudolfo Sanchez in court, it was actually necessary to have a translator. Rudolfo Sanchez couldn't speak English very well, and it turns out Terry Horman can't speak very good Spanish either. So the entire situation with Rudolfo is a complete shit show, and it's very hard to say whether it was a legit murder-for-hire plot by Terry or a very bad attempt to incriminate Terry by the police department. I really have no idea at this point. Not long after that, Terry decides that she wants to change her name, and I think people can understand why she might want to do that, but I cannot for the life of me figure out why she chose the name she did, which apparently was Claire Stella Sullivan, who people found out was actually the name of a character in a murder mystery book, I think. And either way, the judge denied her request to change her name, stating that it was in the public's best interest that she does not change her name. She tried again 4 months later in a separate county with a different variation of the same name, but again was denied. I would imagine that it's very hard for her to find work anywhere in Oregon with the amount of suspicion that's been piled up on her. Things apparently got so hard for Terry that she's had to petition for her own restraining orders against a person that became rather involved in Kyron's disappearance because they were said to be leaving flyers about Kyron everywhere Terry went. A group of people who support Desiree, Kyron's real mom, actually went into Terry's place of employment and passed out flyers telling the community she moved into to ask Terry Horman where Kyron is. And I heard about that on True Crime Garage's series on Kyron Horman, and you should really check it out if you want a different version of the story, because I found it also super thorough, and I love listening to the captain's jokes about Terry Horman, honestly. In 2016, Terry, for whatever reason, actually agreed to go on Dr. Phil. And we all know he's looking to drag her ass through the fucking gutter because that's what Dr. Phil likes to do. He confronts her on several of the common issues that people are aware of in the case have with her. Number 1 is the emails. For some reason, these damn emails have been fairly locked down, but the little snippets we do get were from the screenshots on the Dr. Phil show. And they briefly show a discussion on Kyron's glasses and talk about how Terry is frustrated with Kane. According to Desiree, these emails are a huge reason on why she finds Terry is somehow involved in Kyron's disappearance. Terry thinks the emails are blown way out of proportion. The other thing that Dr. Phil gets on Terry about is the text messages that she was sending to Michael Cook, which were widely known by the public. And when he asked her about those, Terry explains that that was simply a result of her being spiteful with Kane because he allegedly was doing the same thing, meaning he was sexting girls as well. But Dr. Phil doesn't buy it for a second. Besides the Dr. Phil show, all three, Terry, Desiree, and Kane, have each individually gone on appearances on local news or national news segments, and a few issues of People have covered the story too. Terry is usually defending the claims made against her, while Kane and Desiree are usually still holding out that something new in the case will happen. Desiree has written many open letters to both Kyron and Terry, pleading for her cooperation or for Kyron to come home. I believe that Desiree is currently writing a book on the matter, and if I find that it's been published, I'll also link it in the description sources for everyone. In December of 2016, a second guy in Terry's love life had apparently petitioned for a restraining order against her, and he claims that she had threatened him with a knife. I'm not sure if this restraining order was ever granted, but it sure as hell made the news. In May of 2017, the National Center for Missing and Exploited Children released their age-progressed photo of Kyron, and it's transitioned to age 14. And if they're anywhere close, he would be just the cutest little heartbreaker by now. But by now, he'd actually be 16 years old. Just a month after that age progression photo was released, Terry was scheduled for a court hearing in Yuba County, California, for apparently a misdemeanor charge of gun theft. A roommate of hers had claimed that Terry had taken their firearm from his gun safe, but it turns out she actually never showed up for this court hearing. She was eventually arrested for the failure to appear, but was actually found not guilty on the theft charges. The roommate and her must have worked it out or something, but among the other legal issues in California, Terry has also been charged for auto theft, but I don't think it's relative to Kyron's case. For the fourth time, I believe. She marries some guy named Jose in Nevada in 2018, and she still proclaims her innocence and has never officially been charged and never really even been officially named as a suspect, despite the public's opinion about her and their obvious efforts of investigating her. The search for Kyron has been one of the most expensive ones to date for the state of Oregon. I hope their focus on Terry Horman has not steered the case away from ever being solved, but unfortunately it has been 10 years almost, and the chances of finding him alive are very slim. So looking at the information that we have in front of us, let's talk about motives. It's kind of hard to find one. I haven't heard of any sort of life insurance policy increases or even the words life insurance policy at all on either Kyron or Kane for that matter. And you'd think if people assumed Terry was intelligent enough to plan out a murder for hire 5 months in the works, then there would have been some kind of financial benefit to it. I mean, there is that statistic, and not that I have it in front of me at the moment, but I know it's a significant amount of murders committed by females are solely for financial gain, and I can't see anyone in this instance, or how this family could have benefited anyway from Kane or Kyron ending up dead. This would probably be a good time to inform everyone that there has been a second man in Terry's life that has come forward and made claims that she allegedly hired someone to kill him, though. I believe his name is Sean, and I'm not totally sure if that's an alias or not, but the story he told police was that way back in 1990, when they were together, Terry and him were walking through a park in Portland, Oregon, and he says that when they sat down to eat lunch together, some dude comes out from the bushes and points a gun directly at him. And that's when Terry apparently says, "He's here for you." But I guess the dude with the gun pushed out or something, and he ran away without shooting her boyfriend. And because nothing actually came of this weird incident, Sean never reported it to the police. It wasn't until he hears about his former ex-girlfriend from the news about Kyron missing that he comes forward. As it turns out, though, he didn't have to go very far because he's an inmate in their jail. Now, it was said that police actually took this inmate, Sean, out on a field trip to corroborate which park this allegedly happened in. I think the claims didn't hold much weight, though, because again, she's still never been charged for any murder for hire accusations. And again, this guy was in jail, so he might have something to gain from lying in court. I find it more believable that the cops would ask someone to make something up like that just to help them bag Terry at this point. You can tell they want her for this crime, but they just can't prove it beyond a reasonable doubt. And that's a huge issue when it comes to cases like these. Some people think that Terry might have done something to Kyron because she was mad at Kane for sending away her older son. Her older son, James, did live with them for a while, but as most teenagers and parents do, they fight a lot. And witnesses claim Terry talked about her older son moving into her parents' home, claiming it was a decision that her husband Kane had made. Kane disputes those claims and explains that it was actually Terry who inquired that their older son move out because they were fighting a lot. I kind of think she was just tired of fighting with him all the time and probably just told her friends that it was Kane's fault, but she even admits later that she called up her parents and asked if they could work something out for them to take care of her older son. So I would have to disagree that that could be a reasonable motive for why Terry would ever hurt Kyron. Like, I'm sure my mom would have loved to send my ass to my grandparents every so often when things got a little overwhelming because, hormones are crazy. A lot of people like to point out the rather large gap in Terry's timeline on the day of Kyron's disappearance, and that period of time that she claims to have been randomly driving around soothing the baby before taking her into the gym is a major point of discussion. People who believe she was somehow involved point out that she could have used this time to dispose of Kyron's body. Some of those people feel even stronger that someone who was driving so long to soothe a sick baby probably shouldn't take that same sick baby to a daycare facility in a public gym. I personally do find it's a little long to be driving if we're talking about an hour and a half. But from the text messages she had sent, she was only trying to drive around for a few minutes, which would make sense to me because it probably wouldn't take long to soothe the child, considering they just got her medicine that she needed. So after that, Terry's probably going about her regular routine, which includes getting some mommy time in at the gym. Some people have pointed out that Kane has refused any property searches, but from what I found, that's actually not the case. My understanding is that he's only refused to property searches being done when he's not home, which is understandable, wouldn't you agree? I mean, we've all seen The Making of a Murderer on Netflix, and, you shouldn't ever give police an opportunity to plant some shit. But he has agreed to many searches that have been done on the property, considering Terry did used to live there, and still yet nothing has ever been found. Nada. Not a damn thing. So now we can get into some of the actual possibilities that we can derive from the facts that we know. And what we know is that Kyron must have left Skyline Elementary before attendance was taken shortly after 10 a.m. I think it's worth discussing 3 options as to what could have happened to Kyron that day. One of them is that he got stuck somewhere in the school. And I know that sounds a little funny, but this is proposed to me because of the recent case of Harvey Dilley, who was a popular YouTuber who had gone missing. And rumors of his mom's involvement were really spread around like wildfire. But he was actually found to be stuck in the chimney that he had apparently crawled into in an abandoned house across the street. And people were so quick to speculate his mother because of some of the things that apparently Harvey Dilley was saying in his last few live streams and YouTube videos. But his case has actually shown me the amount of children that wander off and get stuck in sometimes fatal situations is not comforting, but honestly, kind of striking. I wonder how thoroughly the Skyline School has been searched. There's a possibility he could still be in there and the remains are to be found still. Is it possible that he is one of the cases of children that may have just spaced out and gotten curious while possibly looking around at all these science exhibits? It seems to me that the investigation has spent an awful lot of time and energy on figuring out how Terry might have done this instead of figuring out where Kyron actually is. For the people who say that if a body was actually stuck in the school, someone would have surely smelled it by now. And I would have to agree, but my thinking is that when he went missing a week before school was out, and if he did happen to get stuck somewhere in the school, he might not have been dead or dead long enough to start smelling. It's possible that no one was in the school during the time it would have smelled due to it being summer break. Now, the school was probably searched multiple times during the initial 10 days, but what about after? I would imagine cadaver dogs have been through the school at some point as well, but have independent cadaver dogs searched thoroughly since the initial investigation? Because of Harvey Dilley's case, I would propose it's worth a look. Also, the school is reportedly closed at the moment, so it shouldn't be too much of a problem to perform another extra thorough search, I would imagine. If If you haven't heard about Anchor, it's the easiest way to make a podcast. Let me explain. It's free. There's creation tools that allow you to record and edit your podcast right from your phone or computer. Anchor will distribute your podcast for you, so it can be heard on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, and many more. You can make money from your podcast with no minimum listenership. It's everything you need to make a podcast in one place. Download the free Anchor app or go to anchor.fm to get started. My second theory is that he unfortunately was kidnapped and murdered. This could have been done either by a stranger who was able to take him at some point, or someone that knows him or the family, and Kyron would have complied and gone with him. In either scenario, the chances of finding him are very slim to me, and if this option did happen, his remains would probably have been taken to another state or farther away than the areas that they have searched. Anyone who wants to argue that Terry Horman could have used the school's lack of security or organization on the day that he went missing could easily be said for any other predator out there looking for a child, whether they were part of the school system, part of the students' families that might have been on the premises that day, or just some fucking weirdo off the street like Joseph Duncan or some shit. Like, honestly, who knows? We're just spitballing here anyways. My third option to consider would be an abduction or like an illegal adoption. This is the only option, like in Dior Kunz Jr.'s case, where someone could have taken Kyron and started a new life somewhere else. This idea could mean that he's possibly still alive somewhere and he would be about 16 years old. And you would think a 7-year-old could remember their original parents, but while that's true, even in cases like Elizabeth Smart, Stockholm Syndrome can occur in victims and they no longer fight the situation. It becomes their new normal. A Reddit thread on Kyron suggests that it might be a good idea for any optometrists out there to take a good look at any of their 16-year-old patients with similar physical features and prescription needs like Kyron's. We know our eyes don't magically get better, so if he is alive, he's probably needed some new glasses at some point. Luckily enough, in the email that was shown to the media, Terry talks about Kyron's prescription being very bad and refers to its numbers as 70/50, so maybe that's something that could actually help in a way. I think this scenario could happen if, let's say, after Terry headed back down to her car after she waved goodbye to Kyron, let's just imagine that maybe he realized he forgot something in the truck, like his lunchbox or something. What if he ran down the stairs and out to the parking lot, across the field, or to where he remembered his stepmom parked? And what if someone was able to take him while they were leaving the school themselves? You would think someone would have seen some type of struggle, if there was one, but not if this person was an acquaintance to Kyron who had offered maybe their help. That could be why he was seen with some male chaperone, like one of the staff members had initially mentioned. And that's the only option that I can think of where he could still be alive, which obviously would be the most positive outcome for everyone, right? I personally have a huge problem with the school's liability on this case. I think it's super fucked up that they didn't get in touch with any of Kyron's parents when they noticed that he was absent for the day. Even if they assumed it was because of some doctor's appointment that Terry was talking about when the teacher was like half-ass listening, the school should have called to confirm that assumption with a parent. It would have taken like 5 minutes and not in any way any inconvenience to a parent just to call and double check that their child is safe. Even if they did call the parents and one of them didn't answer, luckily this child had 3 others that could have been notified. Had someone in that school done their fucking job correctly, the search for Kyron could have started 7 hours earlier by my calculations. And do you know how far you can drive from the Portland area in 7 hours? I'll bet you $50 you could get to Idaho if you wanted. You can make it pretty far south into California too. Hell, you could even go east and visit Yellowstone. In the years since Kyron's disappearance, school systems have greatly increased the security measures across the Pacific Northwest. And I'll tell you, I couldn't skip one fucking class without getting this robot calling up my mom, narking me out by 10 in the morning because I skipped and went to IHOP instead of going to school. A bitch loves her some waffles and bacon, you guys. A lot more than high school gym class anyways. The school system simply failed Kyron. I personally believe that they should be held criminally accountable to some degree, because I believe they dropped the ball more than Terry Horman did. I raised the same argument with the fact that it was rumored that Kyron was also supposed to be doing something for the school's talent show portion of that day that he went missing. And that was supposed to be held from the school from like 1 to 2:45 p.m. I wonder why the teachers didn't question the fact that Kyron wasn't at the school during his portion of the talent show, and no one inquired about where he might have been. If they did, that could have saved 3 hours in the search for Kyron, which still dramatically reduces the range that he could have been taken to. It's hard to not actually get mad when I'm talking about this, because if this happened to my child, I would have burned this school to the ground, I think. During the first days of this case breaking, some guy got on the popular news show disputing Terry's claims that there was some kind of misunderstanding over a doctor's appointment, and that was why the school didn't look into where Kyron was that day. He was making the point that Terry talking to the teacher about an appointment being made the next week of school would be completely irrelevant because the day Kyron went missing was the last day of school. But this is absolutely incorrect, and honestly one of the biggest discrepancies that initially led to the public's suspicion of Terry. It's unfortunate that this guy was supposed to be very high up in the investigation, and he's just spouting blatantly incorrect information off, which only led to misunderstandings. He had said that the last day of school was Friday, June 4th. Terry was saying the appointment she was talking about with the teacher was made the following week on Friday, the 11th. The official last day of school was June 15th. She would have naturally told the teacher about this upcoming doctor's appointment, especially if she was turning in paperwork to have a doctor come in and observe her son. I still have a couple unanswered questions. Specifically, I've been unable to figure out the situation regarding whether or not Terry had discussed with Kane about trading cars on the day that Kyron went missing. I believe Kane has referenced that Terry requested that she use the truck for that day, but I would think he would have said more about it if that was the case. If I felt like my significant other at the time would have some type of involvement in our children's disappearance, then I would want to make a bigger deal out of the fact that they specifically requested to switch cars with me the day that my son went missing. I'd be thinking a lot harder about the reasons as to why they requested to trade cars. Again, I can't find a clear explanation as to why she drove the white truck that day and not her regular car. It could be something as simple as her car was in the shop, but I've literally been unable to find it in the vast depths of rabbit holes that exist in this case. Also, I want to know if there's been any unidentified remains that have been discovered in the surrounding states of Oregon that could possibly be those of Kyron's. It's hard to believe that someone isn't out there cross-referencing unidentified remains with those of missing children, but with the amount of missing children and unidentified remains, I could easily believe that some fall through the cracks. From what I can tell, I haven't seen many articles of remains found that would fit his description. Maybe someone can link something though, I'm not totally sure. I read through a few lists of unidentified remains in surrounding counties, but nothing really popped out at me, honestly. I know there's better lists that can be cross-referenced. However, I just wonder if someone can get into that information and if someone is actively looking for something to tie to Kyron's case. A third question I believe Dr. Phil raised initially, but it is a great question and it's worth repeating. What happened in the home the night before Kyron's disappearance, if anything? Even if it was a completely normal-ass day in the home, I would love to hear their accounts of the day. It would give us all more insight into any possible motives, at least. Even John Walsh, my absolute favorite person in the entire fucking world, believes that Terry Horman is guilty as shit, or at least involved in Kyron's disappearance. His opinion is honestly hard to argue with, given all that nastiness that Terry has seemingly dug herself into. However, even to someone with absolutely no law enforcement experience at all like me, I understand that there is simply not enough physical evidence to charge Terry or any other person that has ever been suspected of anything in this case. Desiree Young believes that the authorities won't charge Terry until they have more physical proof. She believes the failure to make a conviction in the case of Kaylee Anthony, the overshadowing and much larger child murder case that had occurred around the same period, greatly impacted the decisions to charge anyone before reasonable doubt has been acquired. I mean, even in the JonBenet Ramsey case, she was found murdered in her own home, and still no one has ever been charged with her murder. Not saying it was someone in the home, because contrary to popular belief, that someone in her family is responsible. I actually disagree and think it was someone outside the family. But it's just another example of how even having a body in its crime scene doesn't always guarantee a charge will ever be made. There's so many other factors that go into it. Lastly, and obviously, if you have any information that could lead to the discovery of Kyron Horman, dead or alive, you might be able to get yourself that $50,000 they're still offering. You can give any information or tips that you have to police at 1-503-988-0560, or you can always call 1-800-THE-LOST. You can even email any information you have to tipsforkyron@yahoo.com. That's tips, the number 4, Kyron@yahoo.com. If you're interested in helping out Kyron's biological mom and aunt in their quest to find Kyron, you can even donate to their GoFundMe account, which I'll leave the link to in my episode description sources. Before I go, I wanted to add a little update that I have for everyone on the Lori Daybell case. That's the 2 missing kids from Idaho right now. Not much new information has really come out besides the fact that authorities are requesting that the public send out any photographs that they have for Yellowstone National Park goers that would have been taken on the date that Tylee Ryan was last known to be alive, which was September 8th of 2019. So if any of you listeners happen to be in Yellowstone National Park last year on September 8th of 2019, please send your photos in. Other than that, when Lori Daybell arrived back in Idaho for her court hearing, her bail amount was actually lowered from $5 million to $1 million. And honestly, I am super surprised she hasn't posted bail yet. I would have lost a lot of money had I been able to make a bet on something like that and not just bets on football or horses or that kind of shit. Apparently, some of the bond companies in the area are refusing to work with her, which is so fucking awesome. Keep that shit up. Most recently, 2 out of 3 of her legal representatives have pieced out, leaving a single lawyer to deal with the shitstorm she's sitting on. The reasons why they have decided to no longer represent her are actually not known, but I can only imagine that it's because it's a absolute lose-lose situation. Anyways, I will continue to add any small updates as they occur in the coming months because I'm literally all over that shit at the moment. So as I said in my last episode, I'm going to take a season break. I've learned a lot over the last 10 episodes. I'm going to take the next couple weeks to brainstorm some new cases, hang out with my kids while they're stuck at home during this quarantine. Maybe I'll Marie Kondo my stuff. I don't know. I want to thank each and every listener that I've ever had. I ask that you share your favorite episode with your friends. We're all fiending for stuff to do right now. If you listen through Apple Podcasts and you're awesome, you should head over and leave me a podcast review, and I'll love you forever. Speaking of reviews, I'll just go ahead and shout out a few that I've gotten in the last few weeks. First, I want to thank Kate Galana for her super sweet 5-star review. I really freaking appreciate your awesomeness. I shall love you forever, Kate. Next, I even want to thank someone by the name of Lols7 for their 1-star review, because they did actually acknowledge my hard work and effort, yet they also apparently got offended and must have stopped listening to the time that I clarified that I do in fact think Joseph Duncan is a piece of shit human. But no worries, you guys, because Lols7 assured me that they will not ever listen to any further episodes. So in that case, I am not afraid to ask that you all don't be so quick to rush out and give your girl a 1-star review without finishing the entire episode. Please, if I've offended you, just take a quick second or two to simply jot down those not so nice thoughts on a piece of paper and kindly shove it up your snowflake ass. I'm totally kidding. We're all entitled to our own opinions though, and really, just send me an email with your argument to thetruecrimequeen@gmail.com. By all means, I love discussing cases and murders and theories, and we can talk it out. On the other hand, if any of you want some lighthearted content, I was watching a few videos on Facebook the other night called 1-star reviews, and the shit's hilarious, and you should probably go check it out. Anyways, happy season 1, you guys. Happy spring. I'm sorry that we have to stay inside, but, take this time to learn something new, bond with your kids. Remember to always keep your doors locked and wash those damn hands. See you back with a new episode on April 13th of 2020. So that's what I got for you. I hope you enjoyed my rendition of this story, and if so, please tell all your creepy friends about it. You can find the sources I used for the episode in its description. You can follow my Instagram account at True Crime Queen for some laughs if you need a little pick-me-up after all that dark shit. Feel free to leave an honest review on iTunes, or maybe even consider clicking the link in the description to make a small donation to my equipment fund so I can keep making you guys some killer-ass content. See what I did there? I know. Alright, bye!